It took me over 30 years to realize what I'm about to tell you in 8 minutes. The illusion of happiness. What does capitalism and Hollywood have in common? They both have done a brilliant job in feeding us the idea that you will be happier when you achieve or arrive at a specific milestone, whether that's Hollywood telling us and they lived happily ever after, or companies spending millions of dollars to tell us that our lives will be better once we purchase their product, because apparently without it, our lives are incomplete and meaningless. So we spend all our life chasing this idea, trying to hit the next milestone, like getting that promotion, buying that fancy car, or updating our LinkedIn profile to founder, because we're led to believe that these things will make us happier. But the truth is they won't. That initial feeling of satisfaction will soon fade away, and you'll find yourself chasing the next shiny object, telling yourself the same thing again, I'll be happier when I achieve this instead. In psychology, this is known as the hedonic treadmill, the idea that we return to our baseline level of happiness after experiencing the initial high, making us stay on this treadmill to get our next hit of dopamine. And this is why happiness is an illusion. It can never be found in the destination. Instead, by doing things you inherently enjoy, the journey itself will be the reason behind your happiness. Now, speaking of the hedonic treadmill, the reason why we want new shiny objects in the first place, or titles in front of our name, is so we can climb the social hierarchy. In fact, we've been doing this since a young age. In school, we wanted to hang out with the cool kids just so we can feel more important. As we get older, we continue to play this game, but in different ways. Some do it by posting on social media, and others by releasing a book so they can be known as the New York Times best-selling author. In many ways, the need for validation is a primal behavior driven by our survival instincts. For example, many years ago, if you weren't accepted, you would be exiled from the tribe and left to fend for yourself, reducing your chances of survival. It also happens in the animal world, where a male peacock will flex its feathers to attract a mate, and humans are no different. We flex in all sorts of ways to seek validation from the opposite sex, our peers, and even from people we don't know, just so we can feel accepted. But the key difference is we're no longer in a life or death situation, so majority of our flexing is a massive waste of time. And the worst part being, it's a game you can never win, because there'll always be someone higher than you on this hierarchy. Yet you'll continue to compare and play this game just so you can impress those around you. But the biggest irony of all being that no one actually cares. We spend all our life caring about what other people think of us, trying to seek validation through buying things we can't afford, chasing money at the expense of our health, or even as trivial as posting stories on social media of what we're having for dinner. It becomes like an invisible prison where we hold back our ideas, dreams, and even our authentic self because we're so concerned about the opinions of others. But I'm sorry to break it to you, no one actually cares as much as you think they do, because we're all equally as self-obsessed, consumed in our own problems and insecurities, to pay much attention to yours. So that one awkward thing you did 5 days ago that you're still replaying in your head, chances are no one even noticed. This is because of something called the spotlight effect. We go through life thinking the spotlight is always on us, and all our words and actions are constantly being analyzed by others. But in reality, we're all walking around with our own spotlight, so no one is actually paying as much attention as you think they are. So you might as well do what you want and not worry about the opinions of others, because chances are they're not thinking about you anyway. And above all, don't worry about getting the perfect angle for your story. Just enjoy your food before it gets cold. And speaking of food, pick your favorite sandwich. When you pick a sandwich on your lunch break, you're saying no to all other sandwiches that you could be eating in that moment. And life works in a similar way. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. By picking that one thing you want to spend majority of your time on, whether that's family, career, business, a charitable cause, or whatever else, you're invariably saying no to an infinite number of other things that you could be doing instead. For example, if you choose to have kids and don't wish to be an absent parent, then you may have to make certain sacrifices in other areas of your life. But if it feels rewarding to you, then it's a sacrifice worth making, and that's why it's important to pick a sandwich that you're happy to eat for the rest of your life. Now, the flavor may change at different life stages, but ultimately you need to pick the one that's right for you, not the one that's marketed as the bestseller. I got this idea from the book The Subtle Art by Mark Manson, and this one idea changed the way I think about my decisions. And often it just takes one idea to change the way you think. That's why I've started a free weekly newsletter where I summarize books in 5 key points, along with one key idea from me. So if you want to check that out, the link's in the description. Picking your sandwich is just the beginning. The real work begins when you need to show up on a daily basis, even when you don't feel like it. And this is where the power of compounding comes in. It's the small daily micro habits which lead to big results over time. But the problem is, we only see the highlight reel, like the overnight success story. No one sees the countless nights which led to that point, because that's not as exciting. But it's only by doing the boring things repeatedly which leads to that overnight success moment. To put the power of compounding into perspective, let's say you had to pick between getting $1 million today or a penny that doubles every day for a month. Which would you pick? Well, if you picked the penny, you would end up with $5.4 million, and that's the power of compounding at play. This also applies to life. If you did the same thing for 10 years straight, there's a pretty high chance you will attain success and mastery in that field. As Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Now, speaking of mastery, if there's one skill that could transform your entire life, it would be learning how to communicate more effectively. You might be the best at what you do, but if you can't communicate well, you will never be perceived as the best. Because the harsh reality is, people will always perceive you at the level of your communication. This is why the undeserving candidate gets the job or promotion over someone who's more competent and deserving, simply because they know how to communicate more effectively. So if you want to be perceived as the best in your field, as well as working on your craft, you need to start working on your communication skills. And just like any other skill, the more you practice, the better you will get. But don't try to change everything at once. Pick one area of communication and begin experimenting in low-stake environments. As you start gaining more confidence, slowly increase the stakes. This is also known as exposure therapy, a technique where you gradually expose yourself in safe environments to confront your fears and anxieties. The idea being, the more we're exposed to something, the more familiar and comfortable it becomes, allowing us to perform our best, rather than being hijacked by our fears and going into flight or freeze mode. And if you think you still can't because you're too shy or introverted, then maybe it's time you reevaluate how you define yourself. Which brings us to self-image. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Up until this point, your entire life has been driven by an invisible script that's been running in the background. This script is all the labels you've placed on yourself and accepted from the outside world. For example, let's say since a young age you were known as the shy and quiet kid. If so, chances are, you won't behave in an overly confident or extroverted way because people expect you not to. And conforming to how we think others perceive us provides us with safety and certainty. So now your thoughts, actions, and therefore results will all align to further reinforce this limiting belief and maintain this image you have created for yourself. And even when we try to change, most of us fail because we approach it the wrong way. We try to make surface-level changes to our behaviors rather than changing our identity. For example, compare someone saying, "I'm trying to write more this year," with someone who says, "I'm a writer." Who do you think will write more over the course of the year? In almost all instances, it will be the writer. Because for them, it isn't about hitting an arbitrary goal, it's just who they are. So to make any change, no matter how big or small, start by changing your identity, and your actions will naturally follow. The more progress you make, the more you'll reinforce this new self-image, and this loop will continue to get stronger over time. So the pursuit of happiness is an illusion, but chances are you'll continue to pursue anyway, because we're hardwired to climb the social hierarchy. But if you're wise enough, you'll realize it's all a massive waste of time, as no one cares anyway. Instead, pick the sandwich of your choice and spend your time and energy on things which feel meaningful to you. If you stay consistent, you'll reap the rewards of compounding. And along the way, try to master the skill of communication, as the benefits will transcend across all areas of your life. But to change any behavior, make it part of your identity and not just another New Year goal, because your goals won't last, but your identity will.